we're going to be talking about something that's kind of been near and dear to my heart and that I've been thinking about for a long, long time, which is budgeting comics and the idea of when to know you're going to drop a comic, keep a comic. And it started, I'll tell a story, since I have time on my camcorder, I'll tell a story. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, I ran out of room in my comic box. I ran out of room in the place where I store my comics because what I like to do is I like to keep the arcs together and then I put them away and then I keep my current stack in my box that's next to my bed. I ran out of room in my storage, and so I went through and I looked at the comics that are in my box, and I looked at the comics that I had stored, all the arcs and comics throughout, that I've had, and I started thinking, do I really still love this comic? And it started becoming a thing. Part of it was money, do I want to spend all this money on comics a month? But then the other big part of it was, do I, it's like, a good example, Nightwing. I like Nightwing. I like the character Dick Grayson. I think he's a good character, whether he's Batman, Nightwing, or just being, good old Dick. I like Kyle Higgins.
So you were questioning whether or not you wanted it.
Question whether or not that I still really did enjoy the series. And part of it is, do I drop the series, because of budgetary reasons? Do I drop it because for me, I get a pile of comics every week, and I kind of dictate, what comic will I read first, what comic will I read last.
Of course.
At any point, what it comes down to is, do I struggle with, it's like you have those comics that are like Batman, Spider-Man. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to read these. I know that. I'm going to read those. But then you have those comics that are at the bottom of the pile. Those comics that are like, I'm reading them, but I'm not just absolutely in love with them. Do I still keep reading them, or do I drop them and kind of cut my losses? And it's one of those things that I think is a struggle for anybody who buys comics. I mean, you just recently dropped some comics.
I dropped Red Hood, one which I was giving great praise and fanfare towards because it was an incredibly fun comic that dealt with a devil-may-care character who teamed up with with two other devil-may-care characters, and it was just really fun story writing. And oddly enough, I decided to drop Red Hood when he was doing one and dones, when he was doing single stories. Another thing which I've always said, if I want comic books to go back to more single issue storylines, and he did that, and suddenly I'm no longer interested in it. It really, I found that to be itself kind of interesting. The artwork was good. The writing at the beginning was very good, and now the writing's, In other words, I wasn't
in love with the comic anymore.
It was disappointing me. And after reading actually that's not very fair to the writer, Scott Lobdell. I was going into it expecting greatness, and I was going away with, so I did that.
Yeah. It wasn't bad, you just didn't feel like it was on par with the quality that you were hoping.
You said I'm not in love with it anymore?
Yeah.
The honeymoon was over.
Yeah. And you had that same thing with Jonathan Hickman too. You had brought that up.
I've cut all those from my list because he was doing a series of one and dones, and it just wasn't that interesting anymore.
Or it was moving too slow for you.
And he had been moving really slow for a while.
Yeah.
I was really missing that slowness.
And that's something that really does bother me too. And and that's one of the things that's with comics is I've struggled with some comics that I thought I was going to keep for the long haul. Like going in, I thought I was going to keep Batwoman. The art was just stunningly beautiful. But then when I actually went back and looked at the story, there really wasn't that much substance there.
No, there wasn't.
And I found myself going, because I'm not an art whore. I don't care. Like, as long as it has good panel transition and it's something that I can at least kind of visualize, I don't really care if it's in black and white. It works, but I found myself with Batwoman that all I cared about was the art and not really the story.
I discovered when I was about 13, and I realized this when I was appraising the stories I was reading in DC of the late 80s and the early 90s. This is the time of the Keith Giffen, Kevin Maguire Justice League. I started collecting that comic book because of Kevin Maguire's artwork. Then Kevin McGuire went on, and he pretty much just became a cover artist after that, because that's where the money is. I understand that, and I still kept collecting it. That's when Alan Hughes then made his stuff. I realized, and now I've realized with all comic books afterwards, I come for the artist, but I stay for the writing. And as long as you can keep good writing in a comic book, I'll stay with it. Probably for really atrocious stuff, like Scott Badillo in Fantastic Four. That is an artist who's much better than that.
Yeah.
And he wasn't very good, but the storyline with Jonathan Hickman was good enough that I was staying with it.
Yeah.
Now Jonathan Hickman's writing has been lagging. I'm dropping that title. And the artwork's improved. It's Dragoda.
Yeah.